Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to look at a little excerpt that somebody sent me from this book called Symbols and Shadows by Donald W. Parry and J.A. Parry. I think they might be related. They both have the same last name spelled the same way. This was sent to me by Christian Zybarth, and let's just get into it. This has to do with the red heifer. Okay. So the part that we're looking at is right here, red heifer. The Lord revealed that the way to remove corpse defilement was through the sacrifice of a red heifer. And by the way, if you're new to this, this is something that right now the Jews are waiting for as one of the things that has to happen in order to do temple service. Right. Now they also have to build the temple, but before that, they need to have a ritually pure red heifer. A heifer is a cow. Well, okay, it's not a cow. The way that it goes, okay, with cattle, with females, you know, you have calves, and then if it's a girl, it's a heifer until she has her first calf. And then after that, she becomes a cow. So a heifer is a female cow that has not had a calf yet, but she's not a cow yet. So she is a heifer. So they are waiting right now. And I'm going to show you the latest updates that I've been able to find about this. But that's okay. So that's what we're talking about. Okay. Oh, and it goes on to explain right here. A heifer is a young female that has not given birth. Heifers can mate after they are about 15 months old. The red heifer ceremony featured set prescriptions. The heifer had to be, quote, without spot, wherein no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. And this comes from Numbers chapter 19. Okay. Right here. The chapter heading says, directions are given for the sacrifice of a red heifer. The water of separation is used for purification from sin. Ceremonially unclean persons are sprinkled with the water of separation. All right. So Numbers chapter 19. The heifer was slaughtered and then burned together with hyssop, cedar wood, and scarlet wool. Afterward, its ashes were placed in a vessel, and then fresh water, the Hebrew text reads literally, living water, was poured into the vessel over the ashes. This mixture of ashes and water constituted the water of cleansing that was sprinkled on obedient Israelites who had been defiled by the dead. God considered the purification rituals to be so vital to the Israelites that if the defiled person failed to adhere to the appropriate rituals that served to cleanse him, he would be cut off from the community because he defiled the sanctuary. There is much symbolism attached to the sacrifice of the red heifer. The ritual slaughter of a heifer is a genuine sacrifice of economic value because the heifer's owner gives up all the future benefits that this animal would yield: milk, calves, leather for clothing and scrolls, and meat. More significant, the sacrifice of the heifer is symbolic of Jesus Christ's divine sacrifice. Its blood points to Jesus' blood, and the fact that the heifer was a female and potential life giver anticipates the life-giving force of Jesus' atonement. Two colors figure prominently in the ceremony: the red heifer and the scarlet wool. Both red and scarlet denote the color of blood, pointing to Jesus' blood. The symbolism of the water of cleansing pertains to the symbolic purification of the defiled person. Just as water cleanses a person who has soiled hands, even so, the water of cleansing ritually purifies the defiled soul. So it makes sense. Now, of course, this interpretation right here, that's not how the Jews would understand it or read it. And we're actually going to look at how they view this commandment. But that's how we interpret it as Latter-day Saints. I'm sure that the rest of the Christian world probably views it the same. I'm not sure. I haven't checked on it. But it makes sense, right? So let's go to kabod.org. This is the the website and the group that it's basically a revival movement. They're trying to get secular Jews or Jews that have distanced themselves from Judaism to learn about Judaism and come back and start living the commandments. So we've gone over this before, but I figured it would be good to go over again. We did it in this video right here where it says Red Heifer update. This was on March 29th. So I'll put the link for this in the description in case you want to go back and watch that. But we're actually going to pretty much cover the same stuff and some additional stuff in this one. So there's a few things I won't go over again, so you might want to go and watch it. I don't know. Okay, so what was the red heifer? This is from a Jewish point of view. This is a Orthodox Jew website. Okay. One of the most enigmatic mitzvahs, and mitzvahs, that's the word for commandment. So one of the most enigmatic commandments in the Torah is the para aduma, the red heifer, which was used for ritual purification. There have only been 9 such heifers in history, and our tradition tells us that there will be one more in the future. Now, I don't know if that's just Jewish tradition. In our church, we don't really dwell too much on the red heifer. Right. I don't think that this is something that I don't know. Maybe this is something that will be restored for all I know. President Nelson and everyone, they've been talking about the ongoing restoration, how things have not been restored. And a lot of times we think, oh, well, all those things from the Old Testament, they've already been fulfilled by Christ. But no, we know that animal sacrifice is going to come back, at least for a while. Joseph Fielding Smith said that it'll be back. And then after a while, it'll be changed to some kind of like some other nature. We've read about that. For all I know, who knows? Maybe we'll be doing the red heifer again. I don't know. But as of right now, we don't really dwell too much on it. But the Jews are anxiously waiting for this to happen so that they can go ahead and do the temple rituals, construct the temple, because the site, from what we've read before, the temple site has to be purified. The vessels for the temple have to be purified with the ashes from the red heifer. So anyway, according to Chabad, there have been 9 such heifers in the past. And now they're looking forward to the 10th one for the Messianic age. Okay. Here's an overview of the mysterious red heifer, which left even King Solomon, the wisest of all men, scratching his head in wonderment. Ritual. The laws of the red heifer are presented at the very beginning of the Torah portion of Chukat. Actually, no, I forgot to highlight this. I wanted to read this. What was it needed for? Before we can discuss the actual red heifer, we need a bit of background information on the biblical laws of ritual purity. There is a common misconception that the biblical notion of impurity implies filth or susceptibility to infection. Maimonides writes, however, that it's a gezerat hakatuv, a supra-rational mandate of the Torah. It has no rationale that we can comprehend. And actually, they have all the mitzvot, or the commandments, broken up into 3 categories. And I want to read that just, because it's some additional interesting information. Okay, so on this separate article here, this is a strange commandment, and it has to do with the red heifer. But it explains the commandments are divided into 3 categories in Judaism, called mishpatim, chukim, and idot. I am at the end, and then ot is like the plural, right? So the category of commandments called mishpatim. Okay, so the first one, mishpatim, which is probably the majority of the Torah, refers to those commandments that are rational. They are so rational that Even if the Torah didn't tell us, we'd probably figure them out by ourselves, like the prohibition against murder. You don't have to be a very pious, God-fearing Jew to realize that killing is not a nice thing to do. What? I would have had no idea. Many people are not murderers, even though they're not righteous or ethical. This is the category called mishpatim. Edot are a different kind of commandment. Edot are those commandments that we probably would never have invented on our own accord because the Torah told us, we can see some logic in them. Basically, these are the commandments that have to do with testimony. They testify that certain historical events occurred, such as Passover, right? That's one of the observances, is Passover. When God took us out of Egypt, our forefathers ate matzah, which is unleavened bread. So we also eat matzah. It could be that we'd never come up with it on our own, but we can accept it. It makes sense in a certain way. Okay, and then chukim. Now, this is the category that has to do with the red heifer. Chukim. Chukim are those commandments that we just cannot figure out rationally. The classic example is the red heifer. Who would ever think of such a commandment? To take a red heifer, burn it, and sprinkle its ashes. Who would invent such a commandment? No one. Another example is the prohibition against wearing linen and wool. Who would even think of such a commandment? That you shouldn't be able to wear linen and wool. Sha'anez? I don't know what that is. Does it have a pop-up? No. Why not? Or to deny yourself cheeseburgers. Why should the Torah say that this food is no good? That food is good. This meat is kosher because it comes from an animal that chews its cud and has split hooves. Whereas the other meat is not kosher because it comes from an animal which does not have these qualifications. We see that there are certain commandments that just don't make mortal sense. Try as you will never find a rational reason for those commandments. Those commandments are called chukim. Laws, statutes, decrees. You like it, you don't like it. This is the Jewish way. Take it or leave it. And just as a side note, I'm sure that many of you have experienced the arguments about the word of wisdom, about coffee. What's wrong with coffee? What's wrong with drinking a little bit of alcohol if you do it responsibly? I guess in the Jewish sense, they would look at the word of wisdom as edot, but I like to look at it as chukim because it doesn't really matter to me. Like, you could try and think, well, it makes sense. Caffeine, coffee, it has caffeine in it. And, caffeine is, what's it called? Psychoactive. Is that what it is? Let's see. I think it's psychoactive. Caffeine, psychoactive. It's a psychoactive drug.
Worse than coffee than any other drink.
My wife says it's worse than coffee than any other drink, which I think I already knew. But anyway, so you could like come up with the logic of like, well, it has a lot of caffeine, and then the people are like, well, yeah, but people still live long, healthy lives, drink coffee all the time. Well, when it comes down to it, I never ever get into those arguments with people. Okay, for one, I try and just leave it alone and I don't do the debate. But if it comes down to it, the person won't let me go. Then what I say is I do it because it's a commandment, because that's what the Lord wants us to do. That's my belief. You don't have to believe that. I'm not trying to necessarily convince you. In my religion, we don't drink coffee. We don't drink alcohol. Okay. And that's it. And the interesting thing, if you think about it in a rational sense, is aside from the negative effects of caffeine and alcohol, if you look at it from a spiritual sense, there's some people that It could be the straw that breaks the camel's back why they leave the church. Or they may just think that it's so silly, and so they leave the church. So if you're not really committed to the Lord, to the point where uh, you can't accept that we're not supposed to drink coffee, tea, alcohol, then maybe you're just not that committed. Your testimony isn't as strong as it should be. uh, because once when you find out about the Lord, when you find about Christ, when you find about the gospel, you should do everything in your power to do whatever they want you to do. It's God. That's what they want. That's what He wants you to do. And whether it makes sense or not, you just do it. He doesn't just do things arbitrarily. And if you read on, um, if you read on in this article and others, it talks about how, of course, there's a reason God doesn't just do things arbitrarily, but some things may be higher than what we currently understand. So, okay. So anyway, red heifer, it's classified as part of the Chukim commandments, the ones that doesn't really have a rational reason that you can really think of. Okay, the laws of the red heifer are presented at the very beginning of the Torah portion of Chukat. Quote, "This is the statute of the Torah which the Lord commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and have them take for you a perfectly red, unblemished cow, upon which no yoke was laid." And by the way, we're going to look at the update, because it looks like there's a few candidates that might be ready pretty soon. And when I say soon, I'm talking about within months from now. Okay, the sages infer that the red heifer must be completely red. Even 2 black hairs would render it invalid. So I guess it can have 1. I think it can have 1, but any more than 1, invalid. And it must not have done any work in its lifetime. Even having a yoke placed on its back or having mated would disqualify it. Once a candidate was found and there was need for more purifying ash water, the cow would be slaughtered and burned on a pyre along with a cedar branch, hyssop sprig, and crimson wool. The ceremony took place on the Mount of Olives opposite the Temple Mount. Now, I've been using this tool by BYU called Virtual New Testament, where it's just a really basic kind of rendering of Jerusalem and the temple at the time of Christ. So this would be the second temple. And okay, so here's the temple right here, right? It faces east toward the Mount of Olives. Let's go over to the Mount of Olives. And by the way, this is free. I'll put the link. Why didn't it go there? I'll put the link in the description below. You can get this on your smartphone. There's also the desktop version, and that's what I'm using. Okay, so you see the temple. Right now, we are on the Mount of Olives. Down there, that right there is the Garden of Gethsemane in this area. Over here, it's talking about the Mount of Olives. Okay, so the red heifer would actually be done outside the temple, but like right about in this area with this gate open, the Shushan gate, or it's also called the Golden Gate, so that the priest, as they sacrifice it, can see into the temple through this gate right here. Okay, so let's go back here. So the ceremony took place on the Mount of Olives opposite the Temple Mount. The ashes would then be mixed with carefully guarded water drawn from the Shilohic spring. Those who came in contact with the dead would be sprinkled with the ash water on the 3rd and 7th days after their defilement. On the 7th day, they would immerse in a mikveh, and that night they would revert to their original pure status. And by the way, a mikveh, they actually have that here. Let's see, I'll have to find one right there. You see that right there? That's a mikveh. It's basically just like a place to like ritually wash yourself. Okay, washing. Oh, you can't see it from this view. I think there's one on the other side too. There's different ones all around. Let's go over here. Yeah, here you go. Look at that. I think this is a mikveh. Pool of Bethesda. This pool was built directly adjacent. The likelihood. Okay, I don't think this is a mikveh. Sorry. Okay, but there was one on the other side. Okay, let's come back here. Since there is no longer a temple in Jerusalem, the rituals of the red heifer, as well as most of the laws surrounding ritual purity, will be applicable only in the Messianic era. Okay. Does it make sense? Okay, here it talks about choke. Choke would be singular. The plural is the chukim, right? So that's the type of commandment it is. Hasidic philosophy answers thusly: we do the mitzvahs not because we understand them, but because they are his will. And this also extends to the mitzvahs we think we understand. See, so like the word of wisdom, we need to do these mitzvahs simply because they're God's will, not because they make sense to us. Okay. The quest for the red heifer. Even today, one occasionally hears of the birth of a perfectly red cow, and speculation is raised as to whether it is a harbinger of the Messianic era. After all, Maimonides himself codifies the following as Jewish law. 9 red heifers were offered from the time that they were commanded to fulfill this mitzvah until the time when the temple was destroyed a second time. Okay, so commanded to fulfill until the time. Okay, the first was brought by Moses, our teacher. The second was brought by Ezra. So this would have been after the destruction of Solomon's temple, because Ezra was the one that essentially did a revival, a restoration. That's when the second temple came about. 7 others were offered until the destruction of the second temple. So according to this, 1 with Moses, 1 with Ezra, and then 7 others for some reason during the second temple era, and then there was the destruction of the second temple. All right, continuing. And the 10th will be brought by the King Moshiach. May he speedily be revealed. Amen. So may it be God's will. Okay, so they're looking for the Messiah to appear, and then also the 10th red heifer. Now, I guess this would be a good time to look at this. As far as I know, this is the latest update. We've already gone over this. It was the point, it was the main subject of this video. But let me show you what it says here. So this is 7 Israel National News. Rabbi prepares for long lost biblical ceremony. Rabbi, here, let me zoom in. Rabbi Menachem Burstein, who heads the Pua Institute for Medicine and Halakha, Jewish law, has been dealing with issues related to the Third Temple for many years. Despite his opposition to ascending the Temple Mount under the present circumstances, he is in favor of preparing to any possible degree for the Third Temple. One such preparation that he has been pursuing for some time, along with Rabbi Azariah Ariel of the Temple Institute, is the biblically mandated red heifer. The Book of Numbers, chapter 19, the Book of Numbers specifies that the heifer must be completely red, without blemish, and have never pulled a yoke. The heifer would be burned and its ashes used in a ceremony of ritual purification. Quote, pursuant to the efforts we have previously discussed in this regard, we attempted to ensure that there would be a red heifer ready this year, explains Rabbi Burstein. Now, this article is from March 25th. of this year, 2022. March 25th, 2022. So as of right now, that was like less than 3 months ago. Okay. So this is very recent. And then he continues, the cows were grown under optimal conditions, under the careful supervision of pious farmers from the Golan Heights. Unfortunately, during the last year, black hair was discovered in them. End quote. The good news is that the hairs have returned to red within a few months. Quote, at the same time, we are now looking forward to the 2-year birthday of 3 more heifers that were and still are completely red. With God's help, and if there are no mishaps, within half a year, we have 3 red heifers ready for the temple. So that is kind of incredible. So I guess we're looking at September, right? By September. That's just a few months away. We're kind of like at the halfway point between this article and September. So as long as those no hairs change color, this is something not seen in 2,000 years, right? 2,000 years. And then you guys, if this does happen, I would imagine there's probably going to be some kind of upheaval, because the Jews right now it's at fever pitch. Just the tensions, the desire to possess the Temple Mount. It's really intense. I have a playlist called Temple Mount. I also have a playlist called Jerusalem. I have a number of playlists. Go watch any of those. And I've chronicled, just in the short time that I've been doing this channel, August of last year, it's just been insane. The number of people ascending the Temple Mount, the events happening around the Temple Mount, records being broken. It's getting crazy. So if this happens, there are going to be people that are like the Orthodox and people that are like are really, really pushing for the third temple. They're going to lose their minds. They're going to lose their minds, because it's going to be like the go signal. Like, look, we have it now. Now we need to get this temple built. So I think that there could be some interesting times ahead if this in fact happens. So, okay. So let's go back to this article that we were reading from, because I think there was something else here. No, I guess it's in the other one. Okay. Strange Commandment. Was it down here? There. Okay. The calf's mother. Okay. Let's move on to this. This is called the calf's mother. Okay. It says, our sages tell us that when the children of Israel stood at Sinai to receive the Torah from God, they were restored to the original perfection in which man was first created. The Torah reinstated the original unadulterated bond between God and man, so that man was once more granted freedom from the angel of death. Now, in our church, I don't think that we would view that the same way, because we know that it was Christ that needed to come in order to grant that freedom from death, perform the resurrection. So that's one area where we depart. But anyway, continues, but this time too, the state of perfection, the state of perfect connection to God was short-lived. 40 days after the people of Israel stood at Sinai, they transgressed the divine decree. Quote, you shall have no other gods before me, end quote. By worshiping a calf of gold. The pestilence of death introduced into the world by Adam's sin and banished at Sinai was reintroduced by the sin of the golden calf. This explains the connection between the red heifer and the golden calf expressed in Midrashic parable. Quote, a maid's child once dirtied the royal palace. Said the king, let his mother come and clean up her child's filth. By the same token, God says, let the heifer atone for the deed of the calf. Excuse me. Which I would just have to point out, again, a heifer is a cow that has not had a calf yet. So, but again, this is part of the chikuim or chikum. What is it? I just read it. The chikumim, the chikim, the chuki, chukim, the chukim. Okay. Now, down in this footnote, footnote C, it says, the Torah commands that it be slaughtered outside the holy city of Jerusalem, in contrast with other korbanot. I'm guessing that's like sacrifices, which must be slaughtered in the courtyard of the holy temple. You know what? Let's go look at that courtyard really quick. I guess we can just look at it from right here. That courtyard is here. On the left side is the altar. On the right side is like the slaughtering area over here. Right now we're directly above the court of the women. And then when you walk through this gate, just like this like little area right here on the other side of this gate is the court of the Israelites, or I think it's also called the court of the men of Israel, where they present the sacrifices to the priests. So, okay. On the other hand, it must be slaughtered within sight of the holy temple. And its blood is sprinkled toward the Holy of Holies. According to one opinion, it must be slaughtered by the Kohen Gadol, which is the high priest himself, wearing the white garments reserved for the Yom Kippur service in the Holy of Holies. Now, I find this interesting because we know that the Kohen Gadol, or the high priest, it was a foreshadowing of Christ, he being the great high priest, right? He was the Kohen Gadol. He was the only one that could enter the Holy of Holies, and it was on Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day during the year. It's the Day of Atonement in the out of all the Jewish feast, festivals, observances. So it represented how only Christ himself is worthy of himself to enter into the presence of God. And then when he made his sacrifice, then he, the veil was symbolically torn or made, it literally was torn when Christ was crucified, which was symbolic of us now being able to go in to the presence of God because of Christ and his sacrifice. So it's interesting that you have potentially this opinion that it was the high priest that did it. It's interesting. I was thinking about this. So it says here that it had to be slaughtered within sight of the holy temple, and then its blood sprinkled toward the Holy of Holies, the presence of God, right? So if we go back over here to virtual New Testament, and let's go to this vantage point. This is the Fortress Antonia, the Roman fort. And before anybody types it, I know that there's the two different theories about where the temple actually was. I know in my mind, this kind of looks silly, this Fortress Antonia. It doesn't look big enough to me to house a Roman division, or a legion, but whatever. But I know, believe me, I'm aware. So if you look, okay, so the temple is here, right? The Mount of Olives is over here. So the temple is facing that way. And that's where the red heifer would be slaughtered. But what I think is kind of interesting is that when you look like to the north and slightly to the west, right there is Calvary. And that's where Christ was crucified. And then over here is the garden tomb. Now, I don't know if the garden tomb faces toward the temple, but based on this rendering, it does look like Calvary is within sight of the temple. I don't know though, because it looks like maybe the Fortress Antonia maybe would block the view. Unfortunately, with this model, you can't like go over there, but I don't know. That's just something I was thinking about. It'd be interesting if, as far as the red heifer goes and how the red heifer had to be ritually slaughtered and everything within sight of the temple, and then the blood sprinkled toward the Holy of Holies. It fits really good, I think. That's just a thought that I had. It's just a thought that I had. Okay. The red heifer and the third temple in end time prophecy. This is in messianicbible.com. So these would be Messianic Jews, or in other words, Christian Jews. Just as the regathering of the Jewish people is fulfillment of Bible prophecy, so too is the building of the third holy temple. Quote, he will raise a banner for the nations. And I think in our translation, the King James, that's an ensign, right? He will raise an ensign. But anyway, he will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. The glory of this present Acheron, last house, will be greater than the glory of the former house, says the Lord Almighty. And in this place I will grant peace, declares the Lord Almighty. Today, many of the preparations for the third temple have already been completed, including the sacred worship vessels. And by the way, that includes the Ark of the Covenant and the menorah, everything. And priestly garments to be worn by the Levites in the temple services. As well, over 500 young Jewish men descended from the tribe of Levi have been trained as temple priests to fulfill their duties of worship and sacrifice in the temple. And I've done a video about that really, really covers that whole thing. It's been pretty well documented by Israel365.com. I should have pulled this up. Let me go to my channel. And it's this video called, let's see, the actual building of the third temple itself just began. I go through the entire basically chronology of what they've been doing to train the priests, and they've done some reenactments of sacrifices and stuff like that. So you might want to check out this video if you haven't already. It's actually my most popular video out of all the videos that I've done. It's at 134,000 views, which to me is crazy. Okay. Okay. But the temple service can't begin without the para aduma, red heifer. What does the cow have to do with the rebuilding of the holy temple? How could a simple animal play a vital role in the success or failure of such a monumental event? God's word states that only the red heifer can restore the biblical purity needed to rebuild the temple. Quote, and this is from Numbers chapter 19. Then Eleazar the priest is to take some of the red heifer's blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. An unblemished, pure red heifer is the key ingredient to temple worship. Okay, again from Numbers. A man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and put them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They are to be kept by the Israelite community for use in the water of cleansing. It is for purification from sin. End quote. According to the Temple Institute, the organization dedicated to preparing for the construction of the third temple in Jerusalem, these cleansing waters are necessary to ritually purify the Temple Mount area, the sacred vessels, and the entire Levitical priesthood that are all being prepared for service today. So it's to purify the Temple Mount area, the actual vessels and things that are going to be used, and the priesthood. The waters of sanctification are also sprinkled onto all those who were impure, and many were first purified in this process before entering the courts of the temple. Okay, this is from Leviticus chapter 15. You must keep the Israelites separate from things that make them unclean, so they will not die in their uncleanliness for defiling my dwelling place, which is among them. And just since we have it up, you with this program, there is one portion of it where you can walk around the temple area, and if you come over here, they have this kind of fence thing here called the soreg. That's not it. Well, whatever. You see it right here, how there's like these different entrances. This was the point where if you were a Gentile, you could not cross over here. Okay, you had to stay over on that side. So over there would be the court of the Gentiles. So these ramps right here, from what we read when I did my like really comprehensive look into the temple at the time of Christ, it was saying that you would enter in through these ramps that go to the outside, to the southern wall. You would walk up here, and then you would walk through the soreg if you were an Israelite, and then on to the temple. One thing that I haven't done yet is that you have like these different gates right here, and each one has a different purpose. And then there's like a main gate in the very front of it. So I don't know yet the purpose of all the gates, but we're going to look into it. Okay, so many conditions may cause ritual impurity or defilement, but one of the most severe comes through exposure to death. Defilement from contact with death is called tumus mace, or mace. This state of uncleanliness lasted 7 days and prevented a person from participating in the community or temple worship. Although various methods may be employed to cleanse a person from other forms of defilement, such as ritual water immersion, mikvah, which I'm not going to say it, but in our church we have baptism, right? I don't know if that at all in any way would be equivalent to mikvah, or if mikvah more has to do with like would correspond to initiatories. I don't know. I'm not to that point in my understanding, but it's just interesting either way. The ashes of the red heifer is the only remedy for the defilement that results from contact with the corpse. Although some Jews and Christians think that the red heifer is something from the past, never to be seen again, Ezekiel, who prophesies about the rebuilt third temple, also mentions these waters of purification in conjunction with the regathering of Israel, linking the red heifer to the end times in the coming messianic era. Quote, "For I will take you out of the nations, I will gather you from all the countries, and bring you back to your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove you from your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." And then down here, it's talking about the golden calf. I'm not going to go into that because I've already gone over this in this video right here. So, excuse me. I'm sorry. I do it raw. That's how I do these videos. I do it raw. Some people just hate it, but sorry. That's just me. It's just how I'm going to do it. So if you want to find out more, watch this video. But I think that's pretty good for this video. In a future video, I am going to explore what these different gates are. In case you missed my last one, it is pretty long, but we go over quite a bit. I pretty much went over everything except for these gates. So I would encourage you to watch that video. Walk around with me around the temple grounds as we learn about it, explore it, learn new things. But yeah, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.